Hello everyone, thanks for coming along. I'm Simon Briggs, the left-hand box, with the ridiculous name of the EMEA Cloud Strategist for SUSE. And I'm very happy to be here today and speaking with a good friend and business partner and customer.
Yeah, all in one. Yeah, Gareth Chillingworth. I'm Director at iLayer and Solution Architect. And our session today is about essentially how the automation of OpenStack is something I think we needed in our, come on down, in our cloud implementations. Yeah, so shall I kick off?
Yeah, well, the way it's going to work is I'm really just a bit of a hostess. It's one of the easiest jobs I've ever had at SUSE. I'm just helping get Gareth going and allowing him to tell you what good value we've achieved.
So. All right, fantastic. Well, let's get stuck in. So the agenda we're going to go through just in this chat is just an introduction to who we are, so everybody knows who we are and what we do. And I'm sure there's a lot of synergy. Others do the similar things. Little chat about our relationship with SUSE. And then we're going to have a look at our artisan cloud. I'm completely borrowing that from Simon. That's his phrase, which is very much our handcrafted cloud that we've been successfully operating for since 2008, 2009. Simon then would like to bore you all with information about SUSE OpenStack 7.
You will not be bored.
And then we're just going to take a look at some of the features that partner with the problems that we've had as we've grown our very manual cloud. So, and then we'll wrap up with some conclusions. So yeah, let's get stuck in. Okay, so introduction to iLayer. So recognizing that businesses can't stay static, they have to continue evolving. Solution consultancy then is the key to our business. We meet with stakeholders and businesses in London and their offices abroad and work with them on their challenges, crafting solutions for them to address those challenges. We've been busy performing this work since 2000, I would say. And over that time have achieved a staggering number of implementations and solution deliveries to these businesses. We achieve this with the backing of, as a fraction of our partners, we achieve this through the use of services from IBM and through the products that IBM bring. That's now kind of split to Lenovo, and also Juniper Networks and Avaya. Our knowledge of infrastructure for businesses, as I'm sure with many of you, enables us to be authoritative about the way that we provide infrastructure to them and also export their infrastructure to data centers. As a partner of Equinix, we provide co-location services to those businesses should they need to provide a more secure, a more appropriate environment for their production workloads. But in circumstances where they don't want to buy their own iron and put them into those data centers, we provide cloud services, VM hosting for those businesses using our cloud, which represents an extension very much of their infrastructure. And then this is kind of the thing that seals what we do. We provide solution support to back to those businesses on all of those services that we provide. So it's not just a matter of prescribing a solution. We know in most cases that we then go on to support those solutions in the years to come. So they better be good, and usually they are. As a result of the work that we've done with businesses and the integrity that we've brought to the solutions that have changed their businesses, we've had a great retention of clients over the years. In a time when people aren't really brand, there's not a lot of honor in brand. We've maintained good relationships with all of our clients over all of these years. That's going to be important a little bit later on in this. Why SUSE for us? Well, if we're making high integrity promises to our clients about the solutions that we're designing for them and crafting for them, we need to be backed up by those good solutions from the people that we then turn to get the, to get the building blocks of the solutions. SUSE's reliability, we're going to come to that in a minute, is proven for us, and we've been involved with SUSE, I think, since, Patrick, what would you say? I mean, you...
2003.
Something like 2003, 2004. So we have a good understanding of what SUSE bring to the table, as I'm sure many of us in the room do. As an IBM business partner with a broad hardware portfolio, broad systems compatibility is something that's really, really important to us. And we've seen in the keynote speech yesterday, that's now been extended to Raspberry Pi from mainframe right down to Raspberry Pi. So again, this is a really, really critical thing for us. And we have a number of different IBM platforms and some Lenovo equipment that we rely upon to provide our service, and SUSE are critical to that.
And actually some services that run on Raspberry Pi.
Oh, that's absolutely
well, that's convenient.
Yeah, we do, yeah.
We'll talk about that.
Yeah, they take up a lot less rack space and a lot less power. Exactly, yeah. Support of all of it. Well, if we're supporting our clients' solutions, again, we need to feel that we have that cover for those solutions that we're providing out to them. And this is a really critical thing. Implicit openness is something that drives the solutions that we provide to our businesses that we support. A long time ago, we did away with a lot of the brands that provide closed and proprietary services that lock us into their way of thinking about things. And one example is, we'll see shortly, if we have a data center that communicates out to sites all around the world, you can't guarantee who you're going to be communicating with. And so for us, people like Juniper, for example, aside from SUSE, people like Juniper, who are standards-based security devices, we can guarantee that we're going to be able to communicate with those remote endpoints, whatever equipment they're using. That's one element of openness and what it means to us so that we can meet our clients' needs. And actually, I think the no lock-in approach is a part of that.
Yeah,
I think
it's out the same.
Exactly, it comes out of the same kind of approach. We don't want to commit people to a solution, and then when they say, "Oh yeah, we have a new idea, or we've been bought, or we need to do whatever," then say, "Well, actually, you can't leave this solution. It's kind of you're locked in." That's absolutely against what we do. And of course, innovation leaders. This kind of wraps everything up here, I think. We need people who are forward-thinking, and I think we've seen that in all the keynote speeches so far, and I'm sure we'll continue to see going forward. So Artisan Cloud. So we first created our cloud probably before it was called cloud. I don't know, does anyone know when cloud was first coined as a phrase? I know it's the bubble that you see on network diagrams, but when did people start bandying it around?
It's very cloudy.
It's very cloudy, that particular point. Yeah. It's very good, yeah.
Foggy.
Foggy, yeah. Even. Yeah. We started putting this together in 2007, 2008 with our first data center implementation, having recognized that everyone had gone from the one-to-one physical to workload relationship to virtualizing all of their workloads onto smaller, less dense platforms. And our experience with other businesses in lots of different sectors, their infrastructure, it became very clear that at some point they were going to need to burst out and use external site services. Certainly for, in circumstances where customers only had a single site, they were going to need to be able to move those workloads out when they ran out of steam on whatever hardware they bought 3 years ago. One of the things that Simon brought up that I think is very, very true is that people now are still working on budgets, that in some cases could be 5 or 6 years old, but are expecting to deliver so much more. Well, this was going to provide us with a way to give those clients that opportunity. So with a good, solid, and very broad multi-sector client base, good client relationships over many years, we were very much, I feel personally, as the person selling the solutions to the clients, I feel that we were very much a trusted first step, as it says. to our clients in their first tentative steps into cloud, because of course when it first came out there was all the fear about where's my data going, and that was a big blocking factor, I think. For us, in the engagements with stakeholders where we put it on the table, worried about what the response was going to be, in many cases I think because it was us and because we had that longevity of the relationship, we were able to turn that around very, very, maybe with a little bit of discussion. I was going to say very easily. It wasn't always easy, but we were able to talk them around. Our infrastructure in the data center was built to address the demand that we saw back then. And at this point, the kind of little elephant in the room pops into existence. I'm going to come back to that little elephant. It was built to address demand. We already knew we were authoritative on the infrastructures that different sectors were operating on, and we knew how we could consolidate those into a cloud-based implementation within the data center. Come back to the first point, as we started to move people into our, what I suppose was essentially hybrid cloud, they seized upon the flexibility of being able to run up new workloads without, we don't need to buy more hardware. And of course, because it's all a rental model, they tapped into that very, very quickly. And we were successful, I would say, pretty much immediately with that realization. Once they twigged it, once they came to us and said, we have this challenge, but you know, how are we going to come up with a solution to deal with this? It's quite an intoxicating thing to have this big bag of tricks. I'm sure there are other people in the room who are in a similar position. A big bag of tricks, and you go and meet a business stakeholder and you say, tell me about your challenges. And they list them all out, and then it becomes a bit of a counseling session because there's so many other things that they want to see fixed. And we have to stop ourselves from being intoxicated with the ability to fix all of their problems. We have to focus on specific, we have to draw out the specific challenges. And through this, and through migrating them into the cloud, we had great success there. We had success to such a degree that I'm very pleased to say we were able to outpace those clients, those very, very large clients that we had that rely on ITIL for those lock-stock process-driven sort of acquisition processes. We were able to deliver, and we are able to deliver our VMs on our Artisan cloud faster than they are internally. In everything we've done, and I was thinking about this in the lead up to the speech, what problems we've had, and I'm going to show you one in just a second, what problems we've had with those platforms, with that cloud, which is now 3, 2 in the UK and 1 in Europe. And I think in all the time, this is a bit of a SUSE plug, but I think honestly,
we are at SUSECON.
No, but exactly, yeah, but in all the time that we've been running these clouds, I don't think we've ever had a problem that was a SUSE issue. Honestly, I just don't think we did. We had, well, I'll come to issues that we did have, and most of the time they involve customers and their workloads.
Customers, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, customers.
We've all got them. Yeah, it would be.
You know what I mean? It was all perfect until we put your rot on there. Anyhow, yeah, I mean, key things that we really enjoyed were the performance gains that we got through KVM. It would be ludicrous to consider that we wouldn't be in a position where we would be hosting VMs for our customers who also had VMware, for example, in-house. And the last thing we want is, you know, we've bought into your service and actually it's underperforming versus what we have in-house. So suddenly the value is diminishing. That never happened. And we have, as I say, we're hosting people in a number of different sectors, financial markets, who are particularly punishing with their workloads. Right through to various database workloads. So we've had no issue with that. Kernel same page merging, the ability to essentially deduplicate memory has, on a couple of occasions, got us out of sticky situations where we maybe under-resourced certain nodes. Or, to be fair, where in circumstances where we had financial customers, and let's say they had 120 or whatever it was, Red Hat VMs all running similar processes, you don't want to run 120 times that footprint of memory, and so using KSM, we were able to collapse that down. That's an amazing technology. Again, without really seeing any performance issues. And live migration, using shared storage, the ability on occasions when we did need to put more memory in the IBM systems that we were using, the ability to be able to just move workloads off of individual blades or rack servers to other rack servers is a critical requirement, which also maintained that long uptime for those clients. And finally, as a result of all of these successes, we were able to achieve solution growth across Europe, and that's where we find ourselves today. But again, all of this was done kind of the old-fashioned way. So one of the things I just want to have a quick go at without getting too technical, and hopefully we'll get through this quickly, is the architecture and the systems that we used then, because we're going to compare them to the systems that we're using now with OpenStack. And just incidentally, when we were thrashing this out, sort of back of a cigarette packet, back in 2007, 2008, I was using OneNote. I know. I was using OneNote to come up with the sort of the blueprints of how we were going to do it. And for this presentation, I really wanted to get hold of those original images. So I searched all my backups and I found that workbook and opened it up, and kind of a little bit disappointed that they look as absolutely immaculate and brand new as if I'd done them 20 minutes ago. I was gonna make them maybe black and white or sort of sepia, because they are old, but they just don't look it. So I was kind of a bit disappointed about that. Anyhow, so the systems. Day one, the systems that we were using as an IBM business partner, no surprise, IBM Blade Centers. This particular model had integrated storage, which worked really well for us on day one with our finite number of blades here. Of course, this system also comes with dual redundant internal network switching as well, so we could also keep a lot of that in the box too in those early days. For storage, we were using IBM X Series rack servers, pretty much standard workload server. Obviously, we needed to use a resilient and reliable operating system, and an open hypervisor. So these are kind of the ingredients that we were using. The physical structure on day one was very, very straightforward. Dual redundant internet connectivity needed to be backed off against a stack of switches. I'm sure we've all got this in our data centers, which back then were Cisco switches. And then they would be secured by a highly available active-active Juniper cluster. They'd present the networks back into the switches, and from there, that would be disseminated down into the blade center, blade centers. This next slide is important because we're going to look at this similarity between then and now. Back then, we considered that, I think you can just see that, for our blade center, we would need to have routing internally that would provide us with secure client networks onto which the VMs would connect. Those VMs would need to connect forwards out of the data center through an aggregating network, a public or mezzanine VLAN back then as we called it, through our Juniper equipment, out onto the internet. But then these blades would need to be serviced at the back end by administrative networks, such as all the storage, a common rail of storage, the ability to administer the underlying operating systems and the hypervisors, and then finally a hardware control layer for IPMI communication and the ability just to manage the hardware and the switches. And we were resolute that these would need to be segregated, and that, in the most part, certainly the back-of-house networks would not be in any way, shape, or form accessible externally. And then these common rails would facilitate growth as the number of blade centers and rack servers increased. That was our model, and it worked. Now the elephant in the room starts to get a little bit bigger, because in order for that to work, and all of those networks to work, every blade had to have an increasing amount of complexity, a lot of which at the beginning was definitely handcrafted. And this diagram, again, which should be black and white because it's nearly 10 years old, demonstrates how, with the blade switches internally, for each compute node, as it were, I suppose as it were then, we would need to take those interfaces, bond them together into an aggregation link, and then split them out into each of the VLANs that our clients' VMs would plug into. And that wasn't that big a chore, but we would need to do that for every single blade and system in the network. And every time we added new clients, we would also then need to provision these elements, which is why these arrows are here, downwards. And of course, adding one client on one system, we would need to do that on every one of the blades. And so the elephant in the room now is starting to get a bit bigger. Storage. We were resolute that we were going to have a nice slow system for those client workloads that didn't really need a lot of disk, medium storage, and obviously fast storage for those high-performance workloads. We were using NFS, and we exported that to the compute nodes, and that provided us our common platform for all storage. And the net result was, I'm just going to whip through to this one here. The net result was a system where we had those hosted VLANs, those hosted systems running on the VLAN, connected via VPN back to the client sites, servicing their needs and also the needs of remote users. And the result were communities of hybrid cloud. And that's what we did, and it worked.
Great solution.
It was okay. I can't read it. What does it say?
23 minutes left.
Oh my God. All right. Hurry up. Okay. So, the operational positives, as we've said, solid OS reliability. We never had a problem with SUSE. We never had a problem with, actually with any of the hardware, but that's outside of the scope. KVM performance, outstanding. And the ability to be able to move those VMs, those workloads around, meant that we could pull out those blades and add more memory or whatever it was that we needed to do. Rigid platform security. Every one of those client VLANs was very, very tightly secured. Elephant grows a little bit more. But we were able to deliver faster than our clients expected, which was great. We also enjoyed operating cost benefits being lower because we weren't paying closed solution providers licensing fees. And obviously passing that on to our clients. So they love that as well. Operational challenges. This is a pets-orientated cloud. It was a cloud that was built for a company's SQL server or a company's file server, things like that, and was very, very rigid. It is a very rigid system. The clients didn't have that console control, and for some of our clients that use Red Hat systems for their financial workloads, not being able to get to that console meant actually we had to do that. Now the elephant grows a little bit more. We had to perform all of those functions that the client would normally have done themselves, I guess if they'd have done it on their own infrastructure. It starts to become increasingly overhead intensive. We were doing managed VM builds. Because in some cases we were the ones using those VMs, we were the ones that had to liaise as a third party between the client and their target in a business-to-business relationship. The elephant's now huge in the room now. Network provisioning, I've already said, could be quite a challenge. And we ended up with multiple panes of glass to manage this. There was no real sort of consolidation, which meant problem detection was protracted. And fault resolution on occasion, took a long time. And also the storage management was very manual, the way we had to manage what workloads were on what disks, slow, medium, fast. And errand client workloads. Just quickly, this is an example of a very bad day. The time is...
Bad evening, wasn't it?
It was a bad evening, yeah, 11:15 at night. And this is a section of some of our compute nodes, and without going into it, this is Mmon, and everything that's blue is I/O wait. And the reason, and this screen grab is called nothing but wait, and we had a situation where basically everything was in gridlock because one particular client who had told us, no, we don't need fast disks, were busy streaming financial market data, and writing to disk as fast as possible, backed up the buffers on the storage, and before you knew it, everyone was affected by the fact that disk had vanished.
Loop round to comment about customers.
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean, yeah. But you said you didn't need, no, we didn't think we did. We don't really understand our workload. Anyway, it's a learning curve, I guess, for everybody. So yeah, so that's a snapshot of, I guess, artisan cloud, a handcrafted cloud. Sorry, I thought I was going to get through that a lot quicker. But,
so from my point of view as a SUSE representative, I was talking to iLayer throughout this journey, okay? So they were doing what they needed to do at the time to exploit a market opportunity and building good business off the back of our technology. We were all very happy. But there's a reason why SUSE got into the OpenStack game. The reason's been explained. The technology stacks that we had were perfect for being able to move towards this thought process of how to deliver in a much more effective way the kind of solutions that iLayer were building a market around. So we were talking to them about the first tentative steps SUSE made into the OpenStack community. It was pretty fledgling back in the day. We were the first business to take a OpenStack distribution approach to the market. We defined what that approach was, and we were all learning together. And actually, to be honest, iLayer looked very early on, didn't you? You looked at our Essex release and felt at the time that what they'd hand-cranked, probably peeling that away and replacing it with Essex would involve quite a lot of energy and incur a bit of risk, because it was fledgling technology. We made it supportable, we made it usable, we made it deliverable, but you had concerns.
Yeah.
You know, let's get that out there.
Upgrade
let's not be afraid.
paths.
Yeah, upgrade paths were not great back then. I still talk to organizations that are still locked into versions of OpenStack that, in terms of a product line or code base that upstream's refreshing every 6 months, they're on ancient code with ancient code's problems and no real community support. So they recognized that. But over time, SUSE have worked very hard. Our engineers have actually delivered. I'm proud as punch whenever I represent SUSE with this technology stack, because what our technologists have been able to achieve is outstanding. There's reasons why we've won awards. There's reasons why we've won the business that we have. And we've been able to close the gap on the concerns that iLayer have had. Yep. And when we got to the version 6 stage, particularly where VMs could be managed across multiple KVM hosts in OpenStack, so not just at the KVM layer, things really started to become real again for iLayer. And that span us round to then suddenly challenge the platform that's been so successful for iLayer and take them on a new transformational journey as a business that hopefully will allow them to exploit the market they've found even more effectively. Because
it's fair to say that some of those clients, if I may just add on here, some of our clients, their workloads have developed as well. So their needs have evolved past the whole patch store that we had. You know, they're asking us for more. Well, it's essentially what it was.
Yeah,
you know, they're coming to us and asking for those more agile solutions, I think.
Yeah, and obviously version 7 we've announced now is going to bring even more power to that party. Containers as a service on top of your infrastructure as a service represents a real step forward in the ability to deliver the services that are going to cascade out of our clouds. The maintenance, non-disruptive maintenance upgrade across your virtual plane. When you're doing your upgrades in OpenStack, fantastic advancements. And other things, the ability to use Manila, which is one of the projects in OpenStack, to take those NFS shares and present them through your OpenStack infrastructure as shares as a service, is also a powerful capability that iLayer are interested in exploiting. But let's move back to explaining quickly how you've used our technology and how you're transforming your business with SUSE.
So, yeah, thank you, Simon, thanks. So this, just to recap where we are, industrialized cloud is what we want to look at now. So forward with OpenStack. The elephant in the room that was growing over the course of of my explanation was, of course, unmanageability. You know, the ability to, or the lack of ability to have a simple and easy system to manage, it kind of got bigger and bigger and bigger in the amount of effort that it required.
And it's very intensive to keep iterating over those processes you were describing each time you come up against them, rather than using that in a software-defined way, which allows you to do it once and then apply it often.
Agreed. Agreed. So architectural, what systems are we using? Well, guess what? We're still using all the same systems. I mean, there's new kit there, but it's essentially, fundamentally, the same kind of underlying infrastructure. Same OS, we're still using KVM. Network, well, essentially, this is the same networking that we were using. It has administration, it has front of house public networks, and then it has private storage networks for serving the compute nodes and connecting them to the storage nodes and the control nodes. So actually the network architecture hasn't really changed. This is one of SUSE's graphics, as I'm sure if you've used cloud that you'll recognize it. And it's a lot tidier than my big one, my big Visio, but essentially it's still the same thing. We've got a number of interfaces that are bonded together, and that bond has attached to it all of the tagged interfaces for all of the networks that need to be presented to, for example, a compute node or a control node. So that's still the same. Better diagram there. So what's different? The sublime automation. Node discovery. The last two nodes that I installed in our Park Royal data center rack, it took 20 minutes probably to put all the hardware together and put the disks in and the memory and then get the rack mount kit in, slot it in, push it in. I'd done all of the networking, so I connected those up, booted that server, moved on to the next one, rack mounted that, same with the third one. I then went off to speak to the techs, get a crash cart, so I've got a keyboard, mouse and a screen, plugged them in, and by the time I'd plugged, or probably way before then, by the time I'd plugged the screen in, the administration server had already discovered the nodes I'd plugged in, and they were sitting, waiting for me to tell them what they wanted to be, which is that alone is a quantum change from the days of crafting and all right, some script, but the days of crafting what those nodes were going to do. The automation process that's been built into SUSE Cloud means that we can allocate services to these VMs and then just press a button and allocate it, and they go off and deploy. And within, I mean, is it rule the stack?
Oh yes, yeah. So SUSE was able to prove out the power of this automation technology around initially building and then managing your cloud most effectively at the OpenStack summits, where Intel, over a few of them, had a competition to prove out your capability as a vendor. And SUSE smashed it 3 times, embarrassed the market, and Intel stopped doing the competition. So it's disappeared now. But it's a good validation that it's an effective tool.
Yeah.
So
our competitors' engineers were instructed that they are not allowed to participate in that.
Oh, wow.
Directly told.
Yeah. Well, and I'm just echoing that, is that the ability to be able to build the nodes for specified roles and just deploy them without having to handcraft them, that's one element of automation which is just fantastic. Role provisioning, the ability to be able to take a bulk quantity of nodes and set them all up the way you want them and then apply to achieve, for example, that previous frame that showed a number of different types of node, is a fantastic time saver. But also it ensures that each of those devices are cookie cutter built, that there's no human error, in them, no variation on a theme. Standardized configuration profiles, of course, is the way that that's done, and the bar clamp system, whereby obviously there are too many for you to see, but the bar clamp system where each of the different aspects of how the cloud works are set up and then deployed to various servers, again, is part of that.
And to give a quick shout out to SUSE OpenStack Cloud, you are virtualizing a data center.
Yeah.
It is complex what's underneath. What our engineers have been able to do, and why I'm so proud representing the technology, is to abstract that complexity to a point that is very usable and very easily understood. You can actually, within the process, add the complexity back in for your nuance requirements.
Yeah.
So you can morph it a little bit. But we've taken the 80-20 type rule where most people probably will want to achieve this, and then just given the variables that you are needing to use to get to that point mentality. So it really is a very powerful deployment and management technology. Market leading.
I particularly like the way that for any of these bar clamps, when you go into them, exactly as you say, there's a schedule of settings that are probably what you want, which is great if you just make a few changes, allocate them to the nodes, save and deploy them. But if you want to get that granularity, you click on raw, and it literally gives you the command line view of that configuration file, so you can craft it the way you want. Which is
flexibility with
brilliant. Without having to drop down to the command line as well, which again is, it's still a single pane of glass. Yeah, robust and automated, high availability. Hawk enables the clusters within the cloud. Well, to be, SUSE's high availability is probably the best.
You would say open source leading.
Yeah.
We've worked very hard in bringing the open source projects forward and developing that community. Other vendors in the open source world were not that interested in driving that a few years ago. So it does give us a kind of experience and prominent position in those projects that do deliver this technology in the background.
And it is amazing. And the simplified configuration of the bar clamps really makes it accessible.
By bar clamp, we're talking about a technology plugin that allows you to do certain things. It's just a phrase that some people get a bit lost with because they've maybe not heard it before. So it's just a tech plugin in effect.
Two likely suspects that just crept in here at the bottom is, of course, network delivery management and storage. Now we don't have to think about where workloads are going to be placed, where those files are going to be placed. And the networking configures itself for those VMs. So all of that element of the work that we used to do is no longer required. And that's part of the, that automation, that software-defined networking, software-defined storage, making life a lot easier for us.
Yeah, and really call out OpenStack maybe comes to organizations as a server and service delivery harness. But actually what it can allow you to then do around moving towards a software-defined networking platform and a software-defined storage platform, you really are moving into the real power of transformation across your data center delivery.
Yeah. And granular user access experience, the ability to set up projects and for those clients to actually now touch, use, manage, without us being the middleman, because maybe we couldn't deliver that on our old platform. So from front to back, the automation on top of essentially, I suppose, the same hardware, the same OSs, the same hypervisor, that automation set is precisely what we needed. I mean, and that is why that changes the game for us. Implementation challenges, just quickly, I'd just like to call out that bake that cake with crowbar. The point at which you build the administration server at the moment in 6, is it the same in 7? Where basically you've got to have thought very clearly about not only the cloud you want now, but how maybe that will expand in time. You have to factor that into your network configuration and get it into the configuration file, get your ingredients right before you commit to build that administration server, which then orchestrates the cloud deployment.
Can I just encourage anyone in the room, if you are choosing to go on this journey, please talk to people at SUSE like myself, like Peter at the back of the room. That's our role. We are here to help you get this right. Because it's not it's not terribly overwhelming, but
No.
it's something you need to understand.
Exactly, because once it's cooked, like that cake, you cut it open and look inside and go, oh, there's no raisins in it. You're not going to put the raisins in. You need to bake the cake again. And actually, a positive of what SUSE have done with that process of building that administration server using Crowbar is that actually it's really engaging and it's really quick to do. And I have to say, the number of cloud admin orchestration servers that I've blown away because I got to the end and realized, oh, I forgot to do that. But actually, the process of getting there isn't. It takes a while, but it's a very streamlined and efficient and successful process. So you need to ensure that your subscription management. You need to understand where your subscription management is going to exist. What your disk configurations are going to be, how you're going to use the admin server, how you're going to chop that up. These are some of the ingredients. Sorry, I should point out. And then network considerations, whether you're going to have high availability, how you're going to team those interfaces, how many VLANs you're going to have, how they're going to be numbered. Maybe you're integrating it into your existing infrastructure, and what the subnet numbering is going to be. And of course, subnet numbering is a factor that comes into how many nodes in total you may want to have. I think the default is something like 80 nodes is what it'll scale to.
Yeah, you can make different choices around your networking to get more variation there. What I will say at this point, though, is these things need to be understood.
Yeah.
If you're not using SUSE OpenStack Cloud, these things become monstrous.
I
and
can
that's
imagine.
why we have the strapline. We take the pain out of OpenStack because these are just real challenges. They are what are there in virtualizing your data center. We make it easier to understand them and then respond to them for our customers.
Yeah. And finally, following up the rear storage strategy, considerations need to be factored into the building of that. I won't go into network interface mapping. Essentially, there's a point where when you're deploying it to the compute nodes or what have you, equipment varies, and there's an expectation that all the equipment will be presented the same way. There's some configuration, bespoke configuration that you can do there in the background to deal with hardware challenges. Does anyone have any questions?
Excellent.
Whoa!
We're getting questions. That's brilliant. Don't stop it.
Who's first?
Question for you.
Shoot.
In terms of your ability to deliver or provision or turn up a customer faster, let's say quote to cash, once you went to an automated system, did it have a material impact on your business to deliver on that managed service in terms of time to market for your end customer?
It definitely has done, but we're still in the process of measuring exactly what that is. And also don't forget that for a number of our clients, they have the access to be able to just build them up themselves. So we're kind of, to a degree, we are abstracted away from truly understanding that as deeply as we understand on our, the artisan cloud, because we were the ones that actually built them for them and then handed over the completed solution.
And the value of self-service actually is a bit more difficult to quantify generally, isn't it? But it's a great added vicarious benefit that the customers that have been talking to Gareth and the iLayer are saying, this is a great feature. This is something we didn't realize we needed, but now we've got it. Wow, this is excellent.
And they consume more product as a result.
Yeah.
Because it's not, it's a bit like, Apple and, actually that's a bad example, but.
Don't go there.
Don't go there. Fans. Reverse. So that doesn't really answer your question, but in truth, we're still feeling that out for ourselves with our clients. But it is definitely faster. It removes a number of lock-stop processes out of the chain and hands control over to them.
There's a question to.
Sir.
I heard you talk about storage multiple times. So federal government, we really can't use a lot of people's public offers. So. Our plan is actually to try to use this to bring in our Windows deployment. That's neither here nor there. The storage, you're saying it's easy. you just define, this is for my file and print services, this is for my SQL, the high, medium, low access, and then it handles everything? Or you're talking about allocation of storage, and one of your things said you had the different levels of storage?
Yeah. In our previous cloud, we had different disk types. So SATA was going to be the slowest, and then different speeds of SAS, and then SSDs at the top. And depending on particularly what clients told us their workloads were, we would put those images onto that slow, medium, or fast, or super fast disk. So it was a very manual process. I've skimmed over something that's in the background here, is that we're using IBM Storewise technologies in the background, which now use EasyTier to automatically move hotspots up and down between, the storage required to deliver based on how frequently it's touched.
We got the HP 3
Yeah.
Yeah.
And importantly, from an OpenStack point of view, obviously we focused on iLayer's implementation of our technology, but within our OpenStack, you can integrate many third parties' storage solutions, be they high-end arrays or NFS tiers or whatever, through APIs. So we've got them pre-baked into our solutions for many, the big players. But actually, as long as your hardware vendor can deliver a upstream supported version of an API, we can then integrate that into the platform for that integration. And then, of course, we've talked a lot at the keynotes, etc., about SUSE Enterprise Storage, which is actually a software-defined commodity server-based storage option that you can also bring to this technology if you so desire.
We just have somebody who believes they're in the sand.
Yeah, and that's fine.
Everything we do is from sand.
Yeah.
We have no local disk.
And we integrate into that environment very effectively using the crowbar thing we were talking about.
So one of the questions I had is linked to, is it mandatory to use the IBM hardware in the backend?
No, not at all.
So you can go with any open hardware?
Yeah, you can. Yeah. I think it was built on, I think you tested it on Dell, didn't you?
We did a lot of work with Dell because Crowbar initially incubated in Dell, so there's quite a lot of work there. Yeah, absolutely. It's open source technology. It is as open as can possibly be. The control plane at the moment is linked to x86 64. We announced on the version 7 that we'll take on ARM64 capability as well. We are able to utilize, we've got the broadest hypervisor support in the industry in OpenStack, and we're able to go from open source projects like KVM, which is probably the doyen of the OpenStack community, but we also support Xen, we also support Hyper-V, also support VMware, also support ZVM. So on your compute layer, you can even bring in 390 capability as well, mainframe chips, if you want. And we are looking to go broader with all that capability all the time. Is just engineering work to develop.
So you said you got better performance on KVM than you got VMware.
Yeah.
Can you define what performance meant?
I can't remember off the top of my head. The client in question had a VMware farm. They had a VMware farm operating in their data center, and we had obviously our implementations. The way we found out, because of course people don't necessarily confess this to you, was because they were acquired, and in this particular client's case, sorry for the long story, this particular client's case, that they were mandated that they had to retract all of their virtual machine workloads out of third-party clouds and bring them in-house. And they came back after I spoke to the, I can't think of his, Simon Townsend was his name. I can't think of his role, but he was a senior figure there, and his hands were very tied. And he came back to us and said, there are 3 reasons why internally we're not happy about this. 1, at the moment we're getting worse performance out of the VMware platform we're mandated to use than we did out of your KVM. 2, it takes something like 40 days for us to requisition a new VM when you guys would do it in 4 hours. And 3, the cost that we're getting internally back, in internal business billing is many, many times what you used to provide us.
I think you said 3 to 4 times.
Was it 3 to 4 times? Yeah.
Along with the provision associated, it's not just a performance thing, it's more of that's the overall hassle.
So back to the performance for that, were you comparing apples and apples? That you have the same hardware underneath those hypervisors? Like you said, they had an in-house.
That's a fair question. Yeah. No,
It seemed like you had big iron there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a bit of supposition, to be fair, but it's comparable, isn't it?
Yeah. To be fair, I'm taking his word for it, and he was suitably senior that he wasn't. It was surprising that he was. It was actually surprising that he was that open about it. I mean, it comes back to what we were saying about relationships and things, but he didn't know. I'm afraid he didn't qualify that with us. I'm not even sure that he knew. I think really it comes down to the fact that he was a customer of his own business's private cloud, and his experience was just not as good as it was when it was with us, which was just as big a surprise to us as it was, because when you've got big companies and they get acquired, you presume they've got bigger, better kit, better thought through, and it just turned out not to be the case. So I'm sorry I can't give you more specifics about that. It was more it was. I mean, that's how it was. That was how it was relayed to us.
Slightly an emotional comment, probably in reality. Can I just stress something very quickly? As SUSE, VMware are a great partner of ours, and we can integrate VMware as the compute plane in our solution. They also have a fantastic networking, software-defined networking solution in NSX, which can integrate into this solution. And obviously, they've got vSAN from their storage point of view. So importantly, marketing straplines are great, and as technologists, we listen to keynotes and have a little giggle when they come out. But this whole open thing, we live it. We live the dream. We are able to integrate with any of the technology stacks you're talking about, which gives us all fantastic benefit. So, sorry, you were going to...
I was just going to say that one of the hardware that we deployed wasn't absolutely high performance. It's all industry standard. Mid-range CPU clock speed, mid-range number of cores.
Just carefully managed.
It wasn't like we went for the most expensive, we went for what was available.
Yeah, the reason I asked is we were going down this path, and we chosen VMware because of its ability to support soft real-time workloads, so it has a lower latency than VMs. So when I asked you about performance, I was curious, so what kind of workloads were they running on?
They were basic Red Hat servers running a proprietary piece of software which involved database, web. I suppose it was a LAMP stack really, but it was operated in conjunction with a stream of market data that was being analysed, and that was the thing that I suppose really was the workload, and the other elements were peripheral to storing it or viewing it. Sorry, I'm done. It's a good question.
Yeah, are you looking at integrating OpenStack into your VMware estate?
Well, we're considering whether it's an option. So it's a telecom market.
Okay.
So we build a product based on SUSE technology. So it's mostly concerned with the HA and the geo redundancy. So we've done a lot of that kind of stuff. We presented at SUSE in the last couple of years.
Okay. Yeah.
So what we're doing now is we have in our current in-house, we have 17 of our platforms that are running this telecom workload, right? So it's a business voice system.
Yeah.
And so 17, and we're adding one every 2 months. This is becoming a bit of a management nightmare.
Yeah, that's it.
So we're looking at how do we first of all get rid of bare metal because it's killing us. So we're going to be consolidating. And we have about half of our, or a little less than half is VMs.
Yeah.
So we're going to be consolidating that, and then we have choices to make. So we have VMware as the hypervisor, we're using vCenter, and we're putting dense computing on the front end, so the Cisco UCS, so we're putting dense storage in the back. We're trying to make sense of all this stuff. So we're at the inflection point now with, well, what's a best practice path to follow on these things as we're building this thing?
Yeah.
So right now, we're just taking, VMware's word for a few things and just kind of going with that. So I'm trying to get some perspective from what you've done. You've got some experience, you've some growing teams.
And we're actually working with a telecom provider in the UK that utilise the Broadworks, which I'm sure you probably know of.
Competitor of ours.
Oh, there you go, exactly. So we're working with someone who's, I suppose, essentially, at the same point where they're considering, how can we bring automation in here as a result of some large contracts, so that we aren't buried, as ultimately we ended up becoming buried by the management overhead.
Well,
So
we have a few clients in.
oh, there we go. Yeah.
I think one of the clients who licenses our cloud technology, they're building their own private cloud, and they're building their own now.
Yeah.
So we beyond the licensing of our technology, and we have our own problems in house.
Yeah.
We actually offer the service based on that.
And to be completely fair, with the conversation about this client that had to remove their VMs and put them on VMware and had that issue, on the one hand, the benefit to us was they were so kind as to say, geez, we had it a lot better with you guys. But I suppose the flip side of that is what he can't see is internally at their end, their management was probably a lot slicker than the amount of effort it took to provide them with that service. Certainly to initially set it up. Once it was running, it just ran and ran and ran and ran and ran and ran forever. But there were elements that he probably couldn't see, just like there were for me.
I think we got another question there, but I was going to quickly just stress, I did a session yesterday where we talked about the challenges of integrating VMware. It's relevant to any OpenStack. So if you want to catch up with that, that will be made available as part of the SUSECON. Also, questions about how you would architect the solution. You're in North America, is Canada? Yeah. Are you East or West Coast? Which side would you sit?
We're East Coast.
East Coast.
I work for an American company. So
okay.
Our Ottawa offices.
Have you met Alejandro from the American sales engineering team? He's a Puerto Rican guy. He's larger than life. You generally know if you've met Alejandro. But he's... I'm just teeing up that it might be good to link you in with him to discuss the wider challenges of incorporating cloud. Obviously, we will tell you that green would be good, but you could easily remove the green parts and plug in something else if you want to, because it's all open. Yeah. But maybe we can connect that after this. So.
Can I just add, should emphasize that you can choose any hypervisor, but you don't have to choose just one hypervisor.
That's true.
Importantly.
You don't have to make that kind of choice right up front. You decide you want to have some of your workload on VMware, some of your workload on KVM, some of it on Zen, some on Hyper-V. You can do that in the same OpenStack.
Yeah.
Yeah. And manage it in exactly the same way from an OpenStack point of view. Sorry, there was a question over there. Oh, you were stretching, sorry. So there's a question here.
I saw at least a couple of times where you had mentioned that the IT processes got faster than the ITIL. Can you give some examples of what you did in these? Because ITIL is a process, right? Most of my clients use ITIL as a process. I want to know how.
I might need to
Can I jump in?
I was going to say, I might need to tag you in
I talk, as an architect working across Europe, I often talk to my customers. Most of SUSE's customers are embedded with ITIL. They use that process. It's fantastic. But they've developed their ITIL processes for a manual, artisan, intensive stop-start process.
Yeah.
You have to, when you take on cloud, reflect that it's a completely automated way of delivering the same solutions. And culturally, and this is the really tough challenge in a lot of organizations, you've got to change the way your processes work to support that delivery. You still need it to be secure, you still need it to be controlled, you still need all the ITIL benefits, but you just need to think about applying that control system differently. Great example from the OpenStack community. Jonathan Bryce, the executive director of the OpenStack community, often talks to a customer experience they had where they took on OpenStack. It was going to revolutionize the world. And their delivery process from stop to start for new workloads moved from something like 64 days to a fantastic 63 days. And they stood there and they said, that's not really the intention we were wanting to get at. And when they talked to the OpenStack experts, they said, but you've not changed the way you do all your processes in the background. When they did that, they got down to hours. So they got there from days to hours with this technology stack. You've got to think about the change or transformation of everything. The infrastructure's the easy bit.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I only was happy for you to answer that simply because we've already had this conversation, because we've been through exactly this, and that's absolutely the case. Faster than ITIL, I suppose really what I mean by that is that it's that in their own internal lock-stop processes of requisitioning this and having various managers sign off on X, Y, Z, we aren't hamstrung by that because we weren't inside their organization, and we were able to deliver. By the time they'd got to the end of their process, we'd already delivered it and the networking and was ready to go. So from their perspective, if each step had a 2-day period, they knew that by the time they got to the end of their structured sort of acquisition process, that we would already be done.
And using this method, we are still able to cover off the security aspects, which...
Absolutely. None of those corporate challenges go away. You just change how you deal with those challenges to get the best out of what you're trying to achieve. But trying to apply a manually focused process against a digital software-defined process, the two things, you're not going to get the benefit if you do that.
As Simon said when last we spoke, if you think of a contract is the summary of all the bad things that have happened, that each time the company goes, oh, we're not having that happen again, stick that on the bottom. And so each time you sign it, it's, there's less loopholes, as it were. Well, ITIL has kind of been evolving since
early 80s. Its initial.
And as Simon rightly said at the time, maybe it needs a complete refresh. There's just a presumption at this stage, in this day and age, that everything that has gone before is still relevant. It probably isn't, which I think is your... or it needs to change.
I think the community might need to.
I'm not an ITIL expert, but
I can speak to it's been in the contract for so long it's stupid.
Yeah.
We're federal government, Department of Justice. We are required to put any hardware we get in, hard disk replacement within 12 hours, other type of failure within 24 hours, which makes it almost impossible for you to find back-end hardware per se because it's a commodity market. And this is the first place where I found high-level vendors that I can actually put RFPs out to.
There you go.
So that's why we don't have SEF right now because we can't find hardware to meet our contractual requirements that I have to put in because federal government says.
It's an interesting conversation with your security officers because they like to apply ITIL as a rigid infrastructure. But for me, being the person I represent and the way I think about my universe, the structures are there for good reason, but they have to make sense. So you've got to sell back into those groups internally yourselves and with help with experts like ourselves, the iLayers of this world, our partners. You've got to sell into your organizations that changes are coming.
And
we all
not
need
just
to be flexible.
Yeah.
We need to achieve what their goals are, but we just might need to do it with route A rather than route B at the end of the day. I know, it's a real painful conversation. I get into them all the time.
You're not alone, though. Does that help?
Just another thing about the VMware as opposed to, I worked for the Office of the Secretary of Defense for 5 years.
Okay.
2 different secretaries, and they both had one saying that you heard all the time: perception is everything.
Yeah.
So they could have been on the crappiest back-end machines, and you just step them up to the end. That's a much better service.
There you go.
So if you were to buy a huge set cluster of 3 racks, which is 1.5, the disk failed, how does that replace it?
No, no. If a single disk fails, I have to have under contract. or I can't release a request for bid or proposal without having the 12-hour turnaround for bid. And that's the Department of Justice and I'm
Yeah, that's pretty limiting, to be fair. But that's where control clashes with ability to deliver.
That's why I'm spending $600,000 on backup the disk right now.
Yeah.
Because I got to include that in my contract.
Yeah. So thank you all for contributing. Those questions were fantastic.
Yeah.
Probably the best session I've done for conversation from the floor. Thank you all very much. It's been great fun. Enjoy your SUSECON. We enjoy it. It's great to see you guys enjoying it. And thanks for your time.
Brilliant.